welcome back to This Week in Video Games. I'm here with Henrik Kniberg from Mojang Studios. Welcome, Henrik. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing fine, thank you.
And so how's it been going recently? Obviously, we've got the COVID situation. How have you and your teams been doing?
Well, crazy times, right? From one day to the next, we all went home, and then we stayed home. So that's where we are, home. But also not home, because we're all online, so we're all together anyway. It's weird.
Kind of going home, that really must sort of kind of impact things. How was that sort of transition from kind of working all together in an office? I imagine you probably have like collaborative spaces and...
Yeah, we were heavily optimized for face-to-face working. So that was rather like a jarring move. But it worked better than I thought. I have this hypothesis that kind of got validated. My hypothesis is that distributed teams works fine if everyone is distributed. But if only some people are distributed and some are in the same room, then it gets really weird because you're in different places. Some people are in the physical room while other people are in the digital room, and then you get disconnect. But if everyone's in different places, then you're all in the digital room, and then suddenly you're all together again. So I found it worked surprisingly well, actually.
I was wondering, like, because I work in a big distributed team across a kind of number of countries as well, and one of the challenges that we found is kind of maintaining that kind of great culture. And how have you sort of, you can kind of wander over to someone's desk and sort of say, yeah, hey, how's it going? Or take a little walk and have a break by the coffee machine or something like that. But have you added any sort of new team ceremonies into the mix at Mojang?
Well, yes and no. To address the culture question, I totally agree. That's a huge, important part of culture, that kind of informal, spontaneous conversation. I think we had a pretty strong culture before COVID sent us all home. And that has helped us a lot. If we built a new team from scratch under these circumstances, it would have been a different story entirely, I think. It would have been harder. So we're kind of living off of that already strong culture, even now as we're home. The longer time this would continue, the harder it's going to get, I think. We are trying to create some of that bantering, spontaneous conversation stuff. The results are mixed. We have like a fika, the Swedish term fika?
Yeah.
Right, this kind of coffee break thing every day at like 3 p.m. Maybe it varies from individual to individual. Personally, I find that hard because so much of our conversation is over video conference. So at 3 p.m., the last thing I want to do is go to another video conference, even if it's just a social bantering one. So personally, that doesn't really work for me, but I think it maybe works for some other people. What does work, though, I find, is we have like virtual rooms which we set up. Like we call them task force rooms or focus rooms. We use different words for it, but it's like a always open meeting in a sense. And when you go in that room, you're not in a meeting. You're in the room. So let's say I'm working on one feature area. Anybody who's interested in that feature area could just pop in. Or maybe they're not interested in that feature area, but they want to come by and say hi because they know that I am going to be sitting there. So people drop in and drop out of these rooms sometimes. And that I find works really nice because it creates the exact same sensation of I'm sitting and coding and then somebody walks by the hallway and, with a coffee in hand and starts talking to me about something.
It's really interesting because I saw you put out a tweet and you're interested in maybe running a course and putting it kind of inside Minecraft, because we spend quite a lot of we spend quite a lot of time in these virtual worlds, like in MMOs and kind of hanging out and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you see something in the medium sort of term future or the distant future where we could kind of we could translate that to learning, perhaps?
I think so, definitely. It depends a bit on the context, though. Like, as soon as you are in, let's say, Minecraft, I find that you get distracted by the game itself. You start doing stuff. You start, chasing each other or throwing potatoes at each other or building something or running off or whatever, and then night comes and zombies show up and you got to build a shelter. It's like just stuff happening. So it's really great for social kind of, like, not so difficult work together, right? Just informal bantering. But if we're actually going to have a meeting and we actually need to figure something out, then I find that an environment like that, as it is now, is kind of distracting. For example, we want a surface to be able to draw on. And I'm a huge fan of a tool called Miro, which is just an online whiteboard kind of thing. And without that, we wouldn't be able to work effectively. We need to be able to gather around something that we're drawing and right. We basically need a whiteboard. And there is none in Minecraft. If there was, that would be a different story, I think, at least for the kind of work that I often do. But when the thing about the courses, I teach courses around like agile product development. And in that context, there are some places where I want to do physical exercises. We do things, we build something together or solve a challenge in a room physically. And Minecraft is perfect for that, because if we're not in the same room, we're just staring at each other over a video conference. How do we create the sensation of we're working together to solve a problem? Minecraft is perfect for it. So I think it kind of depends on what you're trying to do.
That's fantastic. I wanted to talk a little bit more about your kind of processes at Mojang, and I wonder if you could sort of pull back the curtain a little bit. Like I saw a really fantastic video that you put out recently, sort of how you kind of like come up with ideas at Mojang. I was really interested in how you go from like a small concept to kind of taking something through to production.
We don't have a very formalized process for it. And I like that, actually. I find that when you put too much structure on innovation, it can sometimes kill innovation. So people are coming up with ideas all the time, and are kind of empowered and encouraged to explore those ideas. And the best way to explore an idea, I find, is prototyping. So you can stand there and talk, right? But the idea only becomes really kind of useful when you have some kind of prototype to show what it might look like. And also in your own mind, when you have an idea, when you start prototyping it, that's when it becomes, the questions start popping up. They're the interesting questions. So we try to encourage that. We have every Friday, we used to call it Gaming Friday. Now I think we call it Gaming and Prototyping Friday, where basically the afternoon is pretty much reserved for random prototyping. Not in any structured way. Some people would just play games or do email or whatever, but that is a space we try to not put other meetings in, so that people can just randomly explore ideas. Then in my case, since I'm on the gameplay development team, our job is to build and design features in the game. So for us, it's extra important, since that is actually our job description. Like when we're making an update, like we release new updates once or twice per year, and each update has some theme. So last update was updating the nether dimension, right? And an early update was update aquatic, where we updated the oceans and made those more interesting. So there's always some kind of theme. And once we've set a theme, and then we try to reserve a period of time, like a few weeks, maybe even longer, where our focus is really just prototyping. So we're in that kind of stage right now, actually, for the next major update for Minecraft. So then it's a lot of prototyping, a lot of brainstorming, and yeah, we have this high-level plan for what's going to be an update, but that plan is quite subject to change as we prototype things and see what they actually might look like.
I know as well, you're a big fan of kind of game jams. You mentioned the kind of prototyping that you do on Fridays. Could you tell us a bit more about kind of game jams and the value that they provide you and the teams around you?
Mojang has in the past been participating more in like open game jams, public game jams. We haven't done that so much recently, which I kind of wish we would. So I hope we can get more into that in the future. The game jams we've had have been kind of mostly internal lately, but I find them hugely useful. There's different ways of doing them. Some cases it could be like a whole week with the whole company. In other cases it's more like a feature jam or a problem-solving jam. For example, we had a jam recently where we picked one problematic area in Minecraft. We're like, okay, let's jam that problem. And then it was opt-in. So anybody who wanted to can just join that one day of focusing on that one problem. And then people would just explore tons of different solutions to that problem. So both open-ended jams where you do whatever you want to pretty narrow focus jams where we focus on one type of problem. I think they're just really useful, all of them. Plus there's like a team building effect, right? When I'm jamming, I'm probably working with different people than I normally work with. So new connections form, which is really useful. Plus, I maybe get an insight into some other part of the tech stack or some other, way of working, etc.
Yeah, it's really valuable cross-discipline, if you can get test engineers working with other types of engineers and the UX designers and even product and project management can get involved.
Great.
So.
But it's also stressful. Jams can be quite stressful because there's this kind of unspoken need to want to have to demo something, right? You want to, so if you just jammed and didn't finish anything to show, you're going to be feeling kind of like, damn it.
Yeah.
So I think they're great, but to a certain limit, right?
So do you like to get involved yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. If there's a jam, I'm in every time.
And well, it's a really, really exciting kind of time at the moment. We're on the cusp of this. I feel like we're on this sort of big hill at the moment, looking out into this technological landscape with the new consoles kind of just coming around the corner. We have Nvidia announcing all the like really, really new powerful hardware that's going to go into our PCs. Is there anything in that kind of portfolio there that kind of really excites you about the future?
When it comes to that, I would say no. To be blunt, I don't get excited by new consoles. I don't get excited by stronger graphics cards because you get prettier games. You get more complex games. It doesn't make them more fun. The most fun games I've seen, they work on like really old machines as well because the game concept is fun and you don't need the pretty graphics. So yeah, like with Minecraft, I sometimes play with shaders.
Oh yeah.
And I have a pretty powerful gaming PC now so now I could get make Minecraft look really beautiful. And then for the first 30 minutes, I'm like, my God, this is so cool. I'm taking screenshots and sending to my friends. 1 hour later, I've just forgotten about it and I'm just playing the game. And then if I accidentally shut off that shader, I wouldn't notice it until after a while. I'm like, oh yeah, the shader. So I think there's a difference between being impressed by something versus actually having more fun with it.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed from the sort of PS3 and Xbox 360 generation and that leap to kind of like PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was the kind of more open world, the more kind of like playing together. And I think the technological leap sometimes can sort of bring in more players together. I know there's been that scenario for many, many years on PC.
Yeah.
But one of the games that I'm a big fan of is Destiny, and bringing kind of a number of players in a shared kind of open space. So I thought that was a fantastic leap, and that's something I'm quite looking forward to with the new. It's almost, yes, people can demonstrate great new graphics and amazing graphs that look, twice or three times as.
It's just graphs, right? It's like, who cares?
Exactly. But it's almost the hidden features that we haven't yet discovered. I'm really, really excited about.
But like, for example, I don't know about Destiny, but is there anything that like, do you need a new console for that, or would you have been able to play that with a 5-year-old PC?
So at the time, I believe the consoles, the introduction there of that new technology sort of allowed that sort of landscape to form. It probably would have been possible on a 5-year-old PC, to be honest.
because the technology is called internet, right? We're talking about.
Yeah.
And multiplayer internet games have been around for how many years? So sometimes it feels like we're taking something old that already existed and we're just putting it in a shiny new box and pretending it's something new.
You're absolutely right. So going back to your point, it's all about kind of the fun and finding the fun. And Minecraft is, it's the runaway leader, the most successful game kind of ever made. And you mentioned all the prototyping. Quite simply, I mean, how do you go about finding the fun at Mojang?
I like that phrase, finding the fun. To me, that's a bit of a mantra in game development. Because that's really what it boils down to. Sometimes in games, people get lost in the plan, right? Oh, the plan is to ship these features by that date. And somewhere along the way, they forgot that, oh, wait a sec, it's about finding the fun. And this plan was just a hypothesis, right? I think a really important success factor for Minecraft is the fact that we ship every week. We ship these snapshots. And snapshots are not stable necessarily. They're playable. They normally don't crash. But they are going to be buggy and incomplete. Yet we have millions of people playing on the snapshots. And that feedback is vital because like every time we design a feature, and we have all these ideas for what makes it fun, right? And then we prototype it and we test it like mad alone and with people around us. And then we're like, oh, the fun was over here. It wasn't quite over here. And we change it a little bit. And like, now we found the fun. Great. I'm not even nearly finished with the feature, but let's ship what we have. I'll put it in this week's snapshot. And inevitably, we get surprised by what people do with it. And it turns out that the fun, again, wasn't where we thought it was. So finding the fun to me is all about shipping early and often and getting that real feedback directly from player to developer.
And how do you manage that? I know working with engineering teams, test teams, UX teams, and it's sometimes you have to negotiate quite hard to be able to release it early and often, because there may be a contingent who wants. They say, "Oh, it's not ready. You know, we can't put that out because it hasn't got this feature." What would you, if someone sort of came to you with that point, how would you sort of navigate that one?
I think that's where culture comes in. In some game companies I worked with, there is a strong resistance to, oh no, we can't ship this because the feature's not finished yet. Or even secrecy. We want to keep it secret until it's all done. Then we can present it as this shiny new elephant. Of course, by then you don't know if it's a fun elephant, and you'll probably be surprised. But so some companies have that cultural bias, and it's hard to push back against it. It's possible, but it takes a bit of effort. With Mojang, I find it's kind of the opposite. The cultural bias is towards shipping and learning, even if it's not finished. I think that's just baked into the culture because of years of experience of seeing how important that feedback is. So it's better to ship something that is embarrassingly incomplete and get that feedback and use that feedback to ship something that is beautiful and complete by the time we get to the actual release. So, but yeah, there is always that tendency to want to wait and finish it. I feel that personally when making a feature. I'm like, I've only done 10% of what I want to do with it. Maybe I should wait before shipping it. But what we notice is, there is going to be a snapshot every week. It's a cadence. It's something we ship either way. So if we don't put stuff in the snapshot, it's going to be the most boring snapshot in the world. It's going to be 3 bug fixes and that's it. And then our community gets disappointed and we're not learning anything. So I think that creates a kind of a bit of a pressure to, maybe I should put this early version of this feature in there just so that the community has something to chew on and give me feedback on. Plus the fact that since we're all doing this all the time, it doesn't feel so bad. If I shipped something and it was kind of crappy and I got feedback, this is kind of crappy, it's not like, a big moment of shame because that's happening all the time. So it's just business as usual. Okay, this was kind of crappy. Let's learn why it was crappy. Let's make it better next week. And then that's fine. And even our players, that culture stretches even to our player community. The people playing the snapshots are used to them being, snapshots. So they don't expect them to be complete. So they're not going to get angry at us and tell us that Minecraft sucks just because we put out a feature that was half baked in a snapshot.
That's a fantastic thing. So I know there's one of the ceremonies you have in kind of agile development is like a sprint demo, and this is almost like you're taking that sprint demo out to the audience. So
we don't do internal sprint demos really, because every snapshot is the demo.
Yeah.
We do internal demos for prototypes that we haven't yet shown the community, but that's about it.
That's brilliant. It's a brilliant insight into the inner workings of Mojang. So thank you, Henrik. And I know also we've got coming up Minecraft Live on October the 3rd, I believe. And,
yes, that's correct.
So that must be super exciting for you. And what's on the agenda there, if you can talk about any details?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil everything, right? But a high level, I guess, is we're going to talk about what we're doing, what we're working on. And there's going to be some highlights from the Minecraft community, what's our community up to. And there's going to be a mob vote, so people can help vote what's the next mob going to be in Minecraft. And so yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff happening.
Fantastic. And so how can people kind of get, I know you were thinking about having a live event in person, which 2020 has put a bit of a scupper to.
Yeah.
How can people get involved in Minecraft Live if they want to get involved?
You Google Minecraft Live, and that takes you to minecraft.net/live, I think. And then there is a little introduction video. And then exactly how you join, I don't know, honestly. But it's probably written up there somewhere.
That's all good. So yeah, folks out there, keep your eyes out
Yes.
on October the 3rd.
October 3rd. Yes.
Awesome.
And after that, we can be less secretive about what we're working on, which I appreciate a lot, because I prefer to be open.
And I wanted to shift a little bit away from Mojang and Minecraft onto you, Henrik.
All right.
So how did you originally sort of get into the games industry?
I just totally stumbled into it, I guess. There was never really a plan. I've always liked games. Like, I like playing games. So if someone would have asked me, like, do you want to work in the games industry? I would have said, hell yes. But there's never was any, career plan on my part. I was a consultant. I was like a coder, contractor, coding for food. No, coding for money, for food. But then I gradually morphed into entrepreneurship, where I was starting IT companies. And then I gradually morphed into leadership, because I suddenly had teams and people around me, and I realized I should probably be trying to build an organization instead of being bogged down in code. So then I need to learn leadership and how does that work, and organizational, design and stuff like that. And then that morphed into coaching, because I started writing books and articles around that kind of stuff. And then people would call me and say, hey, can you come and help us, sort out our development process? And then I was suddenly a consultant doing that kind of stuff. So I was bouncing around to different types of companies. But I got to a point where, I was doing good. Like, I had more clients than I could take. So I had to prioritize. And that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So I had to prioritize, and I would prioritize companies that I found were interesting, where I would learn. And often game companies are interesting. They build interesting stuff, and they often have quite interesting technology and interesting cultures. So I generally tended to prioritize those clients. And then, of course, when you get into an industry, you get to know people within that industry, and then suddenly, someone switches to another company, and then they call, right? So it's like this little, pond with the same people moving around between companies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally just stumbled into it.
And I imagine there might be a few people out there listening, and maybe they're engineers, and or maybe they're in different disciplines, like the test discipline or the UX discipline. That they're wondering about leadership, and maybe wanting to take that sort of step up. What would you, what advice would you give them, or what would you recommend in sort of taking those steps?
Well, if you're not working as a leader, but you want to start working as a leader?
Yeah, much like yourself.
Right. Wow, that's a good question. So like I mentioned, I never planned to do it. I stumbled into it. So maybe that's not a good strategy, to just hope to stumble. But there is something I find very useful, which is, and there's a fancy word for it, which I forget, but envisioning what you want. Like really sitting down and thinking about what do I want? What is my ideal perfect future? And then you pretend you're already there. And you sit down and you write it down. You describe a day in your life in that perfect world. And what starts happening is quite interesting, because once you have that clear in your mind, especially if you start talking to others about it, like, this is where I want to be, it's like the universe starts conspiring to help you a little bit. And I don't think it's because of some metaphysical nonsense. I think it's just because if you have this vision in your head, I want to become a leader, or I want to become whatever, a great designer of products. Or once you have that picture in your head, you will unconsciously start looking for that. You will look for those opportunities. You might suddenly remember someone you met last week who worked at some company, and then you might want to have a coffee with them. Or you might remember some article you saw on the internet, or you might just overhear a conversation over lunch. You're just tuning your personal search filter towards that, and it'll increase the odds of it happening. Does that make any kind of sense at all?
Yeah, for sure. It's sort of visualizing where you want to be, and then taking that step.
So in the example of leadership, if you really have that mental mindset that I am a great leader, even though you're not working as a leader, what's most likely going to happen is you're going to start stepping up unconsciously. Some problem happens in your team. You might suddenly step up and try to help the team solve it, or maybe escalate it to someone, or maybe you start reading articles or watching YouTube channels on leadership. You just start doing things, asking those kind of questions, talking to those kind of people, and then before you know it, someone's like, hey, can you help me run this project, or can you organize this event, or small steps, right? But then over time, people will notice that, hey, this person seems interested in this leadership thing and seems to be passionate and doing a good job. So maybe I'll offer him this position. So at least that's throughout my whole career. That's what I see. What happens? You have an idea for what you want to do, and you really think about it, make it clear, and then things start conspiring to help you a little bit. No guarantees. I offer no guarantees, but what this will do is improve the odds, I'm pretty sure.
I've been lucky enough to see you talk at a conference myself, and one thing I've noticed, your illustrations, you have wonderful illustrations in your talks. Do you do them yourself?
I actually do. I like to draw.
And I know you're quite a big advocate of visual thinking, and I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about, first of all, what that is and sort of how that kind of helps you maybe break down problems or in your kind of daily life.
Yeah, visual thinking to me is a habit more than anything else. A habit that I've had as long as I can remember. So maybe it's just different depending on your personality. But for me, I cannot think unless I'm also visualizing. It's just how my brain works. So whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, I need to have a notebook in front of me drawing pictures. Whenever I'm in a workshop and we're trying to talk about something, I'll always almost inevitably be at the whiteboard drawing whatever we're talking about, or whatever options we're evaluating, or whatever solutions we're talking about. It just happens automatically for me. However, what I've noticed is that it actually doesn't only help me, it helps others. Because if we're trying to understand a problem and I manage to create a good picture of that problem and the options that we're evaluating, suddenly the room gets more focused. So I've just noticed that, and then I've started taking advantage of it shamelessly. So things like, okay, we're 4 teams working on a product together, and we're stumbling over each other. Well, what if we just take a big wall here and make that wall show what are our priorities? What are we working on? Who's working on what? What are the constraints involved? Are there any dates here? Any dependencies? Just visualize whatever seems to matter. Make that visible on the wall. And then gradually people that becomes like a center of gravity for the project. People gather around that wall and they start adding stuff to it and changing it. And then it becomes like a shared context for everybody. And then it's like everybody just becomes smarter. They make better decisions. It's almost like magic. So yeah, I find visualization to be fantastically useful in almost any context.
That's one of the sort of challenges in the remote kind of space that we're operating in. It's great when you're working with a team and you have a wall, like you say, you can put slogans up, like you say,
Yeah.
You can map out dependencies, or hey, light bulb kind of area for ideas and
Yeah.
things like that. That's one of the things that I've been missing recently, is that sort of shared space that you can gather around. I don't know if you've had any kind of solutions to that at Mojang, or if you're still sort of investigating that
I would
replacement.
say we found the solution within a day. and I mentioned Miro. It is the wall for us.
Yeah.
It's just like, and what surprised us was, like, I've always been a very strong advocate for physical, just using the walls. And I haven't found any kind of tool that can get anywhere near competing with that. But since we became distributed, we had to. And what surprised me was that in some cases, it even works better with the digital version than the physical version, which I never would have thought I would say. And the reason is because, like, with a physical wall, I became a constraint. Because I like to, let's say we're going to put up like a picture of our work process, and we're going to have columns and sticky notes and arrows. That is a certain skill set to create those visualizations. It takes a bit of, art skill, just a little bit, like maybe just, use a certain type of pen, add some shading, paper, scissor, tape, when to use paper, when to use cardboard, just little, basic techniques to make physical artifacts. And it's not rocket science, but it is a skill. And some people, honestly, most people don't really have that interest. So that means that if I wasn't there, putting up this wall chart, then nobody else would really do it. But with the digital tools, it's easier. For example, if I have the physical board and I want to, let's say we decide to reprioritize our features, we got to swap 2 columns, right? that doesn't take skill, but it takes a bit of work. It's going to be 10 minutes of, scissors and tape after the meeting to move the things, right? It's fine. It's not a problem, but it is 10 minutes of work. With a digital tool, drag drop, right? Or if I want to make a copy of something and make it a little bit different, or if I want to just make the wall bigger, I can't make the wall bigger in a physical room, right? But I can do it in a digital room. So I've noticed that we're using visualizations even more effectively than before, now that we're kind of in this digital environment. But the reason for it is because we're using a tool that is not trying to drive us to follow any kind of process. It is just a whiteboard with lines, pens, and stickies. And there's lots of other tools that do that as well. So that's been a huge insight for me. There is still one downside though, and that is that with a physical board, you can put it in a space so everybody walks past it, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a natural gravitation point. With the digital ones, you don't get this for free, right? You can make a nice board, but you can't put it somewhere where people are going to walk past it. So you can get that effect indirectly if you have recurring meetings in front of that board. So each team has their daily stand-up, right? And they have their team board. Because they gather in front of their board every day, that's the equivalent of the board being on the wall, always visible. So we have other boards like that. We have a high-level board, which we call the dashboard, which shows us the high-level kind of what's going on with the whole release. And we have dashboard reviews every week in front of that board. And they're opt-in. Whoever wants can show up. But a lot of people do show up because they find that that's an interesting, little workshop where they learn what's going on and can influence decisions happening. And because we meet in front of that board every week, it has become, a thing. It is visible. It is kind of like the equivalent of it is up on the wall in the kitchen.
I've also seen some people put things like that as their kind of like Zoom background.
Yeah, that's an option. I mean, I think ideally every person in their work from home setup would have a couple of screens on the wall.
Yeah.
Where we would agree what's going to be there, always visible.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
It certainly has posed an interesting challenge over the last sort of 6 months or so, because everyone is doing it. I feel like we're taking 2, 3, 4 steps ahead in the future, and it's been really sort of sped up.
Yeah.
And it'll be an interesting, when this all this blows over, and if
it does.
Hopefully it does. But it'll be interesting going back to. We'll be going into the next step.
Yeah.
Which will be some kind of, I guess.
Hybrid, right?
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a hybrid model because there's definitely value in what we do and how we do it now, and I think with both situations, either working all in the same place or all working from home, there's pros and cons to each approach, and I think we've got a fantastic opportunity to sort of cherry pick the best of those elements and maybe mash them together in some grand scheme.
Yeah, I'm both excited and a little bit worried and stressed over what's going to happen when we come back to the office.
Yeah.
Because like just a very specific example of our dashboard, right? This big thing that used to be on the wall. It was like this, 5 meter long mega board showing everything that's going on, right? And what's the minimum lovable product for our next release? What is the priorities? What's the status for each platform? It was just this wonderful picture of what's going on. And when we went distributed, we immediately converted that to Miro, and it looks the exact same. It's just literally the same actual design, even the same colors and lines and everything, but digital. And it works fine, almost even better, because it's easier for everyone to see, right? On a physical board, if 3 people are standing in front of something, the others can't see because there's a body in the way, right? But here, anyone can just zoom in and see what's going on. So it's great. What's going to happen when we come back? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to go back to building up the physical version because we're so spoiled now with the digital one where you can infinitely zoom and copy paste and move stuff around. But then on the other hand, what are we going to do with the dashboard reviews? Are we all going to just stay at our desk and put on headsets and stare at the screen and have our dashboard review? Or are we going to have a whole wall full of digital screens? And is that going to cut it? Is that going to work? So I have no idea how we're going to keep that sense of effectiveness which we have now once we're back in the office for that particular thing.
You're obviously really busy working on the next major release for Minecraft, and really looking forward to hearing more about that on October the 3rd.
Yeah,
With all the kind of building of games, how about playing games? Do you get to play anything in your spare time at all?
I make time for it. I have 4 kids at home, and they all love playing games. So that's my excuse to be the gamer dad.
What's something that you like to either play on your own or with the kids?
I tend to binge on a game for like a few weeks, and then I would binge on some other game. So it depends on different periods, right? But typically, Minecraft would be something I binge on for a while. Like I would play Minecraft every evening with my friends for like a few weeks, and then I would suddenly get more interested in like quite often engineering games, like geeky engineering games like Factorio or Satisfactory or Oxygen Not Included. Somehow I just like those kind of games. But other periods, I'll be like playing GTA or Civilization or Stardew Valley. It really depends on my mindset. Do I want tricky problems to solve? Do I want brain dead entertainment? The needs differ for different periods. Also, in terms of, do I just want to sit alone and be an introvert and just play a game and turn off the world? Sometimes that's what I need. In other cases, it's being social. I'm playing games with my kids, and we're, playing, Rocket League or something.
And the landscape for games now is there's literally a game, a genre for everyone. And
it's amazing.
Like,
I really love that. 'Cause in the past, it felt like, oh, it's just yet another shooter.
Yeah.
Or it's yet another RTS that is the same as something else, but with a minor change of colors, But now it's like there's all these unique concepts being created all the time, which is really interesting.
There's even sort of bass fishing games which you can.
Yeah.
Not quite a replacement for the real thing, I don't think.
It's funny. Well, but that reminds me, it's something that you mentioned using games as a context for other types of collaboration. Yeah. I just had a flashback. We have a Vive, a VR set at home, which is really amazing. And one of the games that popped up like a year ago or so, or maybe 2 years ago, was Star Trek. And you would put on your headset, your Vive VR thing, and suddenly you're sitting in the crew of a spaceship. and it looks almost like realistic, right? I'm sitting there, I'm looking around, I can see my hands, I got my console in front of me, and I'm the navigator, someone else is the, whatever, handling the weapon system, someone else is the captain. People I've never seen before, but when I look at them, they are a character in this game, and we are shouting at each other, cursing and pressing buttons and trying to collaborate to get the damn reactor charged in time for the whatever. And it's just instant collaboration. I got to up the call. Can you send me a connection link? Oh, can you hear me? Can you see me? There's none of that. Just put on the headset and just boom, I'm now flying a ship. And I'm like, wow, imagine doing that for just a meeting, right? Yeah. You just go in and we're all sitting there around the table. We have our whiteboard and we have this and we have that and we have our latest product prototype, and it's just boom right there. And I'm kind of surprised it hasn't really happened yet. So that's one of the things that I think will happen in the future, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I hope. I guess the price point for VR would probably have to come down a fair amount, or easy to be sort of easily accessible. But I definitely like the idea of injecting fun in kind of in meetings or something like that, or team building exercises as well. Get on the Starship Enterprise and launch it. So yeah.
But you also get these other options, like if I'm sitting in a VR setting and we're going to examine the latest product prototype sitting on the table, I can shrink myself to the size of a beetle and walk around inside the prototype and examine some part of it. And all these silly things, like suddenly, or I might just turn myself into a unicorn because I feel like it, or just get all these funny things going on, which could be distracting, but also fun. And I think price point, I don't think that's a constraint, considering how much money companies spend on other things, computers, and just buying a VR is the cost of one flight to a conference if you include the hotel, right? So price is not the constraint, at least for business use. However, I think convenience is. So if I like today, I would have to wear this thing on my head, and I can't wear that for hours. I'd get sweaty and grumpy. Plus, when I have that thing on, I can't see I can't type effectively.
Yeah.
You just get limited in all kinds of ways. So yeah, I think the ergonomics of VR is probably the biggest constraint.
It feels like there's something in there for kind of a collaboration tool or collaboration environment waiting to be waiting to be invented. It's almost like a kind of the next step. But it sounds really fun. Well, Henrik, I've taken up loads of your time today. Thank you so much for talking to us on This Week in Video Games. Really,
thank you.
Really, really appreciate it, and I always enjoy our conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, same here. I really enjoyed it. So.
And well, good luck. It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate with the upcoming release for Minecraft. Really, really looking forward to seeing what you've got, and I'm going to be there on October the 3rd, 2020 for Minecraft Live. But good luck with that.
Okay,
and,
thanks a lot.